mean, next year's a bit going to be tricky because I've got yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, no. No. Not for the likes of me.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you design something without performance in mind, I've probably done that myself. You know, been a little naive to what the performance is going to be. It's just a really difficult journey to get then from there to a performance. It's just nice if it's more holistic.
Right.
You've got to try and give it that sentience. That's a word that we use a lot. It's something we try and make sure that most, if not all, of the characters we've got have something that refers to that sense of awareness of one's surroundings. Really, humans, we do it where you see somebody's eyes moving around, you see their kind of nose twitching, you see them kind of, lick their lips, and that might be, or sort of hold their nose if there's a smell, or you're looking for those little signals, I think. And obviously with a puppet like this, I mean, there are some basic movements in there. So there's movement in the eyebrows here, and the ears can move. So they're effectively kind of rods inside, kind of cables and controls inside. How you do that, how fast, if you sort of waggle them quick and kind of go, oh, it's got ears that move. That's great. That's lovely. It's great, and it's a puppet, and it does that. But how you move that and the speed at which you do that obviously creates the illusion that those ears are listening, or that those eyes are, that brow is opening up, so those eyes are widening. But then in the same way as an actor finds their way through a scene, a puppeteer finds their way through and is looking for things that puppet can do that are going to communicate something, some emotion, some might just be the smallest thing. It could be as simple as, that little sense of melancholy, with a head down, that sense of thought process. Those kind of melancholic, quieter moments, I think, are, for me, some of the most enjoyable experiences that I've witnessed as an audience member with puppetry.
It has been known to move a few old ladies to tears on the street, which is bizarre, but it's a collision of all these things, the sculpture, the puppetry, the performance, the music, and also whatever's going on for the people that you meet. You never know what's happening for people in their lives, do you? And then they see this thing, this completely unexpected thing, and it touches them in a certain way, particularly if they're more open or more vulnerable or more lost on that day. It's bigger than its constituent parts. Everything we do is rooted in a kind of picture book world, a storybook world, and this certainly inspires a sense of wonder in adults. And it's something we experience a lot as a child, isn't it? But as adults, it's not necessarily an emotion that's part of our habitual emotional language, and so it bypasses the sort of analytical part of people's brains, and it touches them somewhere else.
I thought it was really interesting in Moscow. We had this character out in Moscow, and when you remove that layer of the communication aspect, so you obviously, we didn't know what people were saying because they're speaking in Russian, but certainly you're very much aware of the emotional reaction to this character. And again, it was a similar thing. It was genuinely seemed to be, moving people emotionally. You could see people's sort of eyes were watering, and they were sort of just going. That was a really sort of affirming moment, certainly for me, walking around with that character, to see that. Nice character, quite T-Rex-esque nose, quite a stubby. It's a big guy though, big puppet. Right.
Who commissioned that? Who's foolish enough to decide they want their own dragon?
Foolish people. There's some little ones. A place called Black Gang Chine down on the Isle of Wight. That was a company who still have that dragon. And in fact, it predates the green one. I would say that was an improvement on on the commission dragon?
Often the commission work we do helps us kind of learn stuff that we then try and bring back into our own stable of characters. Puppetry speaks a universal and eternal language, which is to say that it should make sense to any person in any culture at any point in human history, because it's non-verbal. So this work can travel around the world and resonate really deeply with people who are, you don't share the same language, you don't share the same cultural touchstones, but because it's this archaic form, it's kind of in there with all the sort of forgotten the word, but it's in there. What is the word? Archetypes. Yeah, it's in there with all the archetypal stuff.
This is very much the start of the season, so pretty well everything you witness will have the appearance that we're completely incompetent, but by the end of the season it'll be totally different.
What's the season?
Sort of early November to right up to Christmas time, really. That's probably in here. I sometimes forget just how good we are.
So we are having the penguins.
Yeah, we're with the penguins. They're out with the snow lion.
Oh right, okay, yes.
So
yeah.
Duncan is Duncan Taylor.
Yeah.
You actually find you move faster than if you try and do that. That's good. So
Yeah.
I'm sort of walking the hips, just swing your hips. That's good.
Right.
You've got kind of vision here, and then you'll see you've got ambient light coming through a lycra skin. So they've got loads of movement. So you've got a rod down there which you can push and pull. You can twist it.
Mm-hmm.
They're little babies. You might find if it's really rammed and busy, this seems like a great idea, and then you have like 20 kids like hanging on here going, "Where's the baby?" And you're going, "Oh my God, I just want to die." We tend to stay quite close together.
Yeah.
Not least because practically it's easy for me to look after you. It's also quite a nice image, the two of them together. Pre-pandemic, it was a very common thing. You'd be in a big space like this, like a unit, and yeah, you might have, who's here, there's probably at least a dozen people, if not more, And in that way, you sort of, obviously there were lots of familiar faces that became the community. So you'd be like, "Oh, hello, how are you doing?" And then that sort of dwindled down a little bit, perhaps with shrinking budgets for events. Certainly post-pandemic, I think it's true to say there's generally been less of this sort of thing where there's lots of people around. So this is lovely. This is like sort of harking back to when we first started. We go up, up, up. Down, down, down. Yeah, exactly. All right. You know where we're headed, do you? You've got a rough idea, or yeah.
Not so much in this puppet because we tend to keep quite a big space around him. In some of the smaller puppets, where you can get a bit disconnected from the other characters and the other performers, a bit like claustrophobia, but a slightly different thing about just being, because you're strapped in and you're stuck in, and you just have to get on with it for 45 minutes. You know, you can communicate if something goes really wrong, but it is quite overwhelming, I think, for people who are new to it. But I've been inside giant puppets for a lot of years, so I guess my threshold for overwhelming kind of claustrophobia inside a giant puppet is quite a high threshold.
We were 5 minutes late going out.
Yeah. It was just it was fine because when we got back to that
It was 50
carousel,
minutes.
when we got back to the carousel, and all those people were there, I was just like, we can't just ignore them and walk off.
Out of my way!
I know, and it's always really bad when you've chosen all the other kids and haven't chosen that last
I
one.
know.
Similar to why any kind of practical effects work, it's even if you don't touch him, your brain, the sort of mirror neurons and that kind of thing in your brain is imagining touching him, and imagining like the texture and the feel and the weight.
Islands with you guys. You what, sorry? Islands with you guys. Oh. Yeah.
Oh yeah, hello!
Maybe it was a different.
We were doing butterflies.
Crazy busy.
Oh yeah!
What to do in your free hand? Oh, actually, I haven't done the clip.
You guys
So-
I just make a little video to send to my nephew.
Sometimes you make something as a maker that's technically really pleasing that you know, as a maker you fall in love with, as a puppeteer you fall in love with, they're great to perform, and that when they go out, people respond really well, but if the bookers don't see the value in them, yeah, sometimes work just doesn't sell. You know, we used to make stuff to please us, and I think more and more these days we've got a much better sense of what will sell, of what's commercial.
Like this guy.
Yeah.
He's very much trying to fill that Christmassy niche that
Yeah, so the work's predominantly based around seasons, so you know it's quite pagan in some ways. And it's, you know, rabbits at Easter, you know, big mythic white furry creatures at Christmas. Out the van and helping people celebrate that change in the seasons with snow lions, penguins, or a fox and an otter at spring, you know, or dragons around St George's Day, and then you know, as you're bombing up and down the motorways, watching the trees come into leaf and that kind of vivid green of summer and the way it fades away to autumn, and then this time of year, can't get this bag on.
Who?
I'm talking to you. It's
All my Muppets.
That panel I then laid round and it folded all the way back to here. Then it ended up with a gap. So let's
And
just
there's
let's look at
nothing
the tape
special,
then.
no special allowance for the fact that I did costume and technical special effects for my degree. That's where I learned to pattern make and pattern cut and things like that, and fabricate. I do the kind of bodybuilding of creatures as well, but for these guys, more of the sewing.
Yeah.
Had a fun time wrestling trying to do this by myself
Cool.
last time. I'm just
so
like,
that
there
was
must be a
gonna
trick.
Yeah, go on then. If you hold the arm in, I'll see if I can stuff that in there. Needs to happen there, that. Get that up there. That's a good shot. There you go. Once this all gets a little bit more greasy and it's got a bit more atmosphere and dust on it, it just looks a whole lot nicer.
Yeah.
In this sort of raw state, you get it's just poof, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like it just needs to be out there, really. I think with a bit of colorizing and stuff and a bit of texturing,
Yay.
it'll come
I'm
good.
really glad I didn't try to do that alone.
Right.
Wow.
That's big, isn't it?
Wow.
I was talking to Duncan about what that might be as a character. We were saying, like, what if your steward character, who could have a big scarf as well, it's not the steward that talks, it's the bear that talks for the steward. So the steward is there for that practical element of looking after the bear, but actually the bear's going, "This is my friend.
Yeah, that's cute.
He's coming." Like, I just found a nice way of sort of flipping that round. I know, mate. I know, mate. I'll do a little bit of that on there, just give you a bit of a sense of what goes on with that.
It's amazing, isn't it? It does like.
What a lovely little, that, even just that there, just seeing him look down at you there, that's gorgeous. We're sort of performing with feet on the ground. This is up near, what's that? You know, you're up sort of seven and a bit feet. Once you've got that fluff on the head again, that whole head's going to kind of feel a lot bigger and a lot more substantial.
It's so magical. This is like half finished that we've like made, but it's still just so magical to see it.
Imagine that's going to be,
to life,
that's going to be
isn't it?
great. How exciting! How genuinely pant-wettingly exciting!
Ooh.
Yes, I might have wet my pants.
Ooh.
Yeah. No, yeah, exactly. Oh, a nice one. Yeah. Can't wait to see that, like, bounding along with that when you've got that elasticity in the neck as well to hold that. You've got to look at that. That's great. Isn't it?
Ooh.
That's Michael Crouch doing what he's always loved doing his whole life. Since he was a little boy. That's his happy place. Oh, that's beautiful. This is the juice, man. You need that stuff. I think you need to. We've often made a point of, like, in the middle of a project, you can't, even if it's just bits and pieces on the table, you just try and jam it all together and just have a look. You've got to try and see it. You've got to try and know where you're headed, because that's the stuff that'll keep you going. You know, if you've got to work through the night, which is a pretty painful experience at the best of times, but that's the stuff that kind of just that's the fuel, really.
This is magic, isn't
Like,
it?
this is the bit that kind of you go, okay, yeah, that's good. There's a glimpse of